The National Prosecuting Authority and Democratic Alliance are back in court today, hearing judgment from North Gauteng High Court over the reinstatement of corruption charges against President Jacob Zuma. Let's cross live to the North Gauteng High Court, where the hearing is underway.
The issues of law concerning the grounds of review and the separation of powers doctrine have been considered and settled by the SCA in their judgments, which are referred to in the main judgment. There is thus no legal issue arising out of the main judgment which requires consideration by the SCA. The applicants further criticized the main judgment by submitting that the court did not consider the affidavit of Mr. McCarthy to the High Court that the prosecution process was of the highest integrity, whilst he, Mr. McCarthy, had been engaged in an illegal investigation in the conduct of Mr. Zuma at the time. The submission disregards the fact that when Advocate Mse made the decision to discontinue the prosecution, did not mention it. The submission was made when the main application was argued, and we did consider it. The court, in adjudicating the matter, did take into consideration what the SCA found in the Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Association of South Africa case. The court clearly stated in the main judgment that Advocate Mche's decision to terminate the process due to the alleged abuse or manipulation of the prosecution process was irrational. It was submitted on behalf of Mr. Zuma in the heads of argument in paragraph 7.5 that the decision to charge Mr. Sheikh only should be regarded as irrational. We fail to understand the relevance of this submission because Mr. Sheikh's conviction was confirmed by the highest court. Furthermore, Mr. Sheikh's issue was not mentioned by Advocate Mse when he took, when he took his decision. I'll repeat. Furthermore, Mr. Sheikh's issue was not mentioned by Advocate Mse when he took his decision, and same cannot therefore be a reason for his decision not to prosecute. There is no merit on this ground. Mr. Zuma, in paragraph 7.6 of his heads of argument, submitted as follows. I quote, "On the evidence, Mr. Mse did not act overcome, in brackets sick, emotional, nor was he pressured," unquote. Crucially, the third respondent further alleged that emotional people often take impeccable decisions. Mr. Hofmeyer clearly stated in his affidavit that Advocate Mse was angry at the time when he took the decision to discontinue the prosecution. We are of the view that the applicants have also raised irrelevant and non-meritorious factors to try and support their contention and arguments that there are other factors to be considered. The Superior Court Act has raised the bar for granting leave to appeal in the Mount Shivau Trust, Shivau spelled C-H-E-V-A-U-X, trust case. Bertelsmann J. held as follows, I quote, "It is clear that the threshold for granting leave to appeal against a judgment of a high court has been raised in the new act. The former test whether leave to appeal should be granted was a reasonable prospect that another court might come to a different conclusion. See Van Heerden versus Conrad and others, 1985, volume 2 SA 342T at 343H. The use of the word would in the new statute indicates a measure of certainty that another court will differ from the court whose judgment is sought to be appealed against. unquote. The applicants are not challenging the orders granted by the court, but they extracted and misinterpreted the following undermentioned sentences in the main judgment to formulate grounds of appeal. Namely, 1, I quote, "The court of law is the appropriate forum to deal with the abuse process doctrine and not extrajudicial process." And 2, Mr. Zuma should face the charges as outlined in the indictment, unquote. In reading the judgment holistically, it is clear that the court never created a principle that the NDPP has no power to discontinue the prosecution. Furthermore, the court did not interfere with the separation of powers principle and did not order or direct that the NDPP must continue with the prosecution. The attack by the applicants based on the above sentences is ill-founded. The said sentences should be read in the context within which they were made in the judgment and not read in isolation to create a different context. The authorities relied upon by Advocate Imse do not support an extrajudicial termination of the prosecution. Advocate Imse relied on English case law and Hong Kong case law, which did not support his decision not to prosecute. Importantly, the said authorities, the circumstances of the case, and the advice that the NPA received from their senior counsel supported that the abuse of process should be dealt with by the court. Advocate Imche's decision was carefully considered by this court. The alleged conduct of Mr. McCarthy was not brushed off by the court, hence it is stated in the main judgment that should the allegations be proved that the conduct of Mr. McCarthy stands to be censured. When the court deals with an application for leave to appeal, leave may only be given if we are of the opinion that appeal would have reasonable prospects of success or if there are some other compelling reasons. In our view, there are no novel legal issues raised in the matter. The respondents The applicants invented novel legal grounds by misinterpreting sections of the judgment or some selective sentences in the judgment. The fact that the public has an interest in the matter is not a justification to grant leave to appeal. The matter is, of course, important for Mr. Zuma. However, if the appeal does not have reasonable prospects of success, leave to appeal should not be granted. There will, in most instances, be different interpretations. However, we have carefully considered the authorities referred to, and we are of the view that the court interpreted and applied the authorities correctly. We seriously considered whether the appeal would have reasonable prospects of success and came to the conclusion that there are no merits in the arguments raised by the applicants. We have carefully reconsidered our judgment and conclude that the appeal does not have reasonable prospects of success. We therefore make the following order. 1, the applications for leave to appeal by the first, second, and third applicants are dismissed. 2, the first, second, and third applicants are jointly and severally ordered to pay the costs of the respondent, including costs of to counsel. We hand down the judgment. That's beautiful. Court adjourns.
All right.
The Court just adjourned, and there were live visuals of the hearing that was currently underway in the North Gauteng High Court, talking about political motive at play in this. And now into some breaking news.